Board of Education. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Thank you. Student Member Torres?
Here.
Member Nguyen?
Here.
Member Jones?
Here.
Vice President Hill?
Here.
President Thomas?
Here.
Thank you.
I would accept a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve.
I second.
Member Nguyen moves to approve, and Member Hill seconds that we approve the agenda. Please vote.
Student Member Torres, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. 5 ayes.
Next, do we have any public comment on agenda items?
There were none. There were none.
Seeing none, we will go to our main purpose in this agenda, and that is the superintendent search process. Acting Superintendent Nicole.
Yes, we have Leadership Associates here this evening, so I'm going to immediately turn it over to them today, and they're going to start walking you through the process. If you don't mind introducing yourselves again for the public. Thank you.
Absolutely. Eric Andrew, Leadership Associates. I've been there with the firm 6 years.
Jackie Horsch, Leadership Associates, and I've been with the firm, I think it's 2.5 years.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for having us tonight. We're really excited to be here. This is one of the fun parts of the evening and for the process for us, because we get a chance to hear from you in terms of what you would like to see in your next superintendent. We're going to walk through one of the documents titled Board Initial Meeting Discussion. And we'll start there, and I'll just kind of walk you through this process because this will help us with some of the logistical aspects of things. So for example, we'll review the entire process. We'll talk a little bit about who's going to be your board liaison. We'll talk about, and that basically means sometimes a board has all 5 or 4, in this case 4 members or 5 members be a part of the process and communication. Other times the board has a subcommittee and they'll identify 2 board members who then will serve as the proxy for the board. Doesn't mean the entire board doesn't get everything, because they do. But if we're going to contact the board, typically it's either all of the board members or a committee of 2. So the board will have a chance to have that conversation tonight to determine which is the best way that works for the new board. We'll also talk about the executive assistant and some of the work that she's done. I know that Jody has already met with our executive assistant, and they've had their initial meeting, and so they're on board, ready to go. And I think tomorrow we start to fire it up. Next, we'll ask you for your your emails, because as we decided, we'll decide even if you decide to go on a committee, there will be items and things that we want to make sure every board member gets. And so we want to be able to have your accurate email addresses for that purpose. In some cases, we'll even ask you for your personal cell phone numbers, because sometimes we'll just say, hey, sending you an email on this particular topic, be looking for it, and so on. So we like to be sure we are, you're available and that we're available to you, and that we can have rapid responses. In addition to that, number 5, it says, we'll discuss the community input. This is a section where we want you not only to identify the groups that you typically would bring to the forums that we're going to be conducting in person here, but also looking at groups who in the past may have felt as though they've not had a voice at the table. So here's your chance to say, you know, we've been hearing this voice, we need to bring them to the community input sessions and make sure they have a scheduled time. Looking at that, we'll take a look at and the stakeholder information. We'll go over the list that we typically ask or provide as a template, but it is only a template. Every community is different. There may be other groups, there will be other groups that you may decide this is an important group that we're going to be part of. our group may have names and things on it that you may decide we don't have that in our community, so we can cross that one off, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. Going to number 6, we'll talk about the final timeline, and so we'll discuss what we have as a prospective timeline, and then we'll work with the board to really finalize what will the timeframes be, particularly for the community input meetings, looking at the deadline for the candidates to apply, looking at when we bring you the candidates in the tiers that we've talked about earlier, which we say, here are all of the people who applied for your particular district. Here are the top tier who we believe meet the criteria that the board and community has identified as with the characteristics and the skills that they want to see in their next superintendent. We will bring every single applicant who submitted an application to you for your review. And in fact, you will get a copy of their information, their application and letters before we have this meeting. So you have a chance to do your homework on it, to get a sense of the candidates themselves. One of the things that'll be a little different will be keeping in mind that although you will have an opportunity to look at the applications, the reference letters, and the other aspect of things, we will have done the reference checks. So we're going to have additional information that you may not have privy to as you preview the documents themselves. We'll talk about publications, when it's going to go out to our publications that we use typically, and then we can talk about, are there other places you want to have it published? You know, sometimes people want to have it in their local newspaper, for example, and some of those types of places. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the closed session we talked about earlier, about the review. We'll have an interview date, and we'll decide how we want to run that interview. Oftentimes, depending on the number of candidates, we'll do it in one day. Sometimes, depending on the number of candidates, we may decide, you know, it may take us 2 days to do this one. And so we'll get a chance to have that conversation. We'll talk about what's called a validation visit. Sometimes the board, we decide that if there is a candidate who's local or even in Southern California, the board sometimes will say, you know what, we want to go to that site, talk to some people like their board, talk to their union reps, talk to their parent groups and say, hey, tell us a little bit about this candidate. It helps validate that, the candidate themselves. And you'll do that. We'll talk about contract parameters. In the end, when we identify the 4 to 6 finalists or however many the board decides they want to interview, we're going to ask them to put together what's called a contract parameter sheet. And that contract parameter sheet will have, here's what their asking price is, meaning their salary. Here are their health benefits they're asking for. Here are the vacation days and any other of those types of things, which will be important because as we move to number 9 on that list, we're going to ask you for your current superintendent's contract, meaning the superintendent who just left, to get an idea of here are some typical things that the board has approved in the past. Doesn't mean you're going to approve them this time. In fact, we're going to talk much more deeply about what are the contract parameters that this board would like to see in the new contract for the superintendent. We'll also have questions of clarification. I don't understand this aspect of the search, or can you give us more details and so on. So this is just an overview, and then we'll finish the open session with the 3 questions or prompts that we ask every single group that we're going to be interviewing. What are the characteristics you want to see in your next superintendent? What are the strengths of this district? What do you want to brag about? This is your chance to brag about, here are some great things that are going on in Newark, because we want to be able to tell candidates that, hey, by the way, did you know this is happening in Newark? And so this is your chance to brag. And then we'll follow that up. What are some of the challenges and things that that you see as a board that the district is facing along the way? Every group that we talk to, we're going to ask the same 3 questions. Doesn't matter if it's a teachers union, parent groups, civic leaders, et cetera, students, we ask the same 3 questions. We take that information and we look for trends. And through those trends, we determine or not, we say, okay, here are the trends that a lot of the groups or most of the groups have identified that are the characteristics they want to see. Here are the personal characteristics, the leadership characteristics, and the overall characteristics that this community wants to see in their next superintendent. So we want to be able to do that. We'll bring that to you as an executive summary, as well as in a final document that we will have what's called a position description. And that's what we'll be putting out for candidates to apply towards, because we always tell candidates, you want to know what the districts want before you decide to apply, because you want to make sure your skill set is in line with what the district said that they wanted. By the way, I don't know about you, Jackie, but I've already had 5 candidates reach out to me about this particular position. And what's cool about that is, and they've not seen the position description because we've not done it, obviously, is that I would say they were 5 pretty high caliber people. I would think, yeah, I could see based on the characteristics that we come up with that, yeah, you probably could be a good fit for, for the district overall. But we tell them, wait until that position description comes out, because that is what you need to be writing to. That's what your cover letter should have. That's what your application should look like. That's what your resume should look like. And then we do the background checks to get a better sense of who these people are. Some of the 5 we'll look at and think, yeah, you're pretty strong in a lot of places, but it's not quite what Newark is looking for. And that's okay. That's okay for us to say that, because every district is unique. We want to make sure we find people who meet what the board and your community says they want to see. So that's kind of a quick run through of what's going on, what we'll be talking about tonight. Should take about between an hour and a half to 2 hours to do that. Then we'll adjourn to closed session. And during that closed session, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the specifics of the search that are much more confidential that we want to go over with the board. Okay. So I've taken the liberty to take a look at some of them. So we've done number 1, kind of discussed the overview, et cetera. Number 2, the board designates a liaison or subcommittee or the full board. How would you like for us to communicate with you? And this is for you guys to have that conversation.
My preference would be all 4 of us being communicated with.
I would agree.
I agree as well.
Okay, so it sounds like, and Select Board Member Nguyen, you yes as well? Okay.
Yes.
Good, so we'll make sure we contact all of you. Any communications that go out, it'll go out to every one of you, okay? We'll make sure that we are cognizant of the Brown Act. And so it's one way typically. We're not going to ask you to respond back to us. We're going to basically say, here's information for you. If there's a situation we want you to respond, we'll tell you, you'll respond to us at this particular meeting in public. Okay, so that's how that'll roll. Looking at number 3, the executive, Jody has been identified by the district as our liaison. So she'll be sending out information to you that we'll send to her. She will be working with our admin from our firm to put things on the website, to update the website, to any changes that need to go out in terms of publications and so on. She will be a part of that process. Yes, sir.
And one of the things that you mentioned in your sales presentation was that one differentiator for Leadership Associates is that you are providing dedicated administrative support. And I would say that given that we, are going through a transition right now, that we could really use that. And, I'm sure that Ms. Croce would eagerly accept as much help as, I don't want to speak for you, but my intent is to not try to put more on her shoulders and to try to the degree that you can take things off of her plate. I think it would be appreciated by everybody.
Thank you for saying that out loud. We've actually had a conversation with Jody this evening about that, and we've been very clear, and she's been very clear in working with our admin about the help that she's going to need, because we recognize too her position, as you said, in terms of having to cover this in her day job as well.
And she's already mentioned to us that she had a great conversation with Penny, that Penny's been very helpful so far, so I think the ball is already rolling.
Mm-hmm. But thank you for saying that publicly. Yeah, thank you. That's important.
I have a question or comment.
Yes.
Is it, there may be things that you would like to know. Is it okay if you ask the superintendent, our interim superintendent, any questions that, I mean, I don't want to have you just only communicate with us if there's something that he can probably better answer?
In most cases, we will keep him out of it. However, there are going to be times in which we're going to say to him, we need their responses. I'm going to send them this email. I need you to really do a check to make sure that it's coming back. So we'll do a lot of that for sure.
Okay.
Okay?
So I think he's just in for the coordination with the board and leadership associates.
Exactly. So he'll help, and that's what he's done so far. He'll help coordinate. But in terms of the specifics of the search itself and those details, we'll keep him out of it.
Yeah, because the searches are the
It's
responsibility
ours.
of the board.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And so we are going to task Jody with giving us your emails. So, since she probably has them.
And if you prefer that we contact you with a personal email rather than your district email, just let Jody know. Sometimes board members prefer that, so whatever your preference is.
Yeah. And also let us, you can talk with her in terms of your, how comfortable you are with us having your cell phone numbers. Because we will also give you our cell phone numbers back and forth. But not everyone's comfortable with that, so we respect that. And if that's the case, she will asking you for both. And if you say no, you say no. No worries. Let's take a quick look at the next document, which is the stakeholder group document. Let's see here. It says input sessions, sample groups. These are the groups, and just kind of scroll through, that we typically have focus groups with during the process.
And some of these groups aren't necessarily standalone the way that they are here. So for example, if you look at number 4, it's leadership team. Well, if principals are part of your leadership team, how you define it, then, you know, those groups would meet together, so.
And that's where we would probably talk to, for example, your interim. Just say, okay, what are the groups, your leadership groups, what do they look like? Because he would know that we have a leadership team and it's consistent of principals, directors, coordinators, et cetera, et cetera. And that would be his input to that. But overall, we would like for the board, we're going to give this to you. You don't have to finish this tonight. However, we do want you to finish it pretty soon. We'll talk more about it in closed session, but we do need this back because at some point we're going to be scheduling the groups, particularly the groups that we know you're going to talk to. We know you're going to talk to the teachers union. We know we're going to talk to parents. We know you're going to talk to some community parents. We know we're going to talk to students. We know we're going to talk to classified employees. And so those we can kind of get rolling and get them scheduled because we want to make sure that they have some priority in terms of the slots that are available. The other thing that we will do is if there are more groups than slots, we figure out how we're going to do it. And so if it takes us extra time to come an extra day, or in some cases, some of your city officials, if you choose to bring the city officials, they often like virtual because it works better for them versus coming to your district, et cetera. So we'll keep that in mind as well, because we want to make sure that if you say you want us to talk to this person or this group of people, we want to make sure we provide the time, even if it's not necessarily during that particular window to reach out to them. Yes.
So I know that the list can be extensive, but is it possible to just group them, you know, into groups? I think last time when we did the last search, we had a stakeholder group that included like a couple of people from these categories.
Yes.
So I figured that would be more useful of your time.
Right, exactly. So for example, sometimes school site council reps get combined with parent committee leaders, get combined with PTSA or PTA, you know. So putting those groupings together gives you the economy of efficiency.
Thank you for that.
I think the former mayor would be a good person to talk with.
Okay.
He was mayor for 18 years and on the council for 30 or 40. I
Okay,
forget.
good. Excellent. Are there other groups who aren't here that you can think of off the top of your head that you'd like for us to make sure we reach out to? Yes.
In our district, particularly in terms of people who are attending our school, we have a large Latino community, and I think that we want to make sure that they're properly represented. And again, that could be a combination of, of parents and students, but maybe also other stakeholders. But then the other thing, and this might be a little bit trickier, but one of the challenges that we face in our district is declining enrollment, like in many districts. And is there a way to reach out to, and maybe we can brainstorm with you and talk about it, but to identify the people that aren't a part of the system right now and a part of the discussion, to get them involved and to get their input, because maybe based on their participation, and if someone's selected that, again, they feel good about, that maybe we can turn around some of these enrollment challenges.
Absolutely. And one of the ways that we do that is through the online survey. We get a list from you guys to say, okay, we want to put a blast out to all of these people to say, there's an online survey in which you can respond to the same 3 prompts. And that group could be listed as one of the outreach groups that we put out there. In addition to that, what we find, and we'll talk a little bit in a few seconds about the online survey, it's a great tool that we use to get even more input. An example, sometimes you'll have a teacher who's going to fill out those 3 prompts from a teacher's perspective. But I'm also a parent. And I may want totally different characteristics for my superintendent for my kid's school. I want, and so sometimes they will be in 2 and 3 categories in which they'll get a chance to respond. Sometimes as a school board member, you're a school board member, but if I'm just a citizen, a community member here, there's some other things I may want to look at that I want our superintendent to be able to do. So it's an opportunity for people not only to attend the community forums, and also the focus groups, but also the online survey. And that's really, we get a lot of rich information, because even in settings where we have groups, sometimes people aren't comfortable speaking in that group.
Correct. And also, I just, following up on Member Hill's comment, excuse me, sorry.
Bless you.
I just wanted to be mindful that we have translation during the focus group.
That's what I was going to, that was the next thing I was going to ask you, because even on the online survey, we want to make sure that what languages do you want? And we will tell you that here are the languages that we have available for the online survey. And then if there are other languages that you want that we don't have, then we'll talk with you about it. Okay, are there some systems that you already have in place that do an outreach and so on? So we're looking at interpretation in person, interpreters in person, as well as taking the online survey and saying, okay, we know we want English, we know we want Spanish. Are there other languages that we would like to use? In fact, let's have that conversation now. Those are 2 primary languages that we...
Those are currently the 2 primary languages,
Okay.
but I do believe there's additional languages in the district, but I don't know the percentage.
Percentages? Okay, and so maybe we can have a conversation with the district to get a
Yes.
sense of, okay, there seems to be a significant number of this particular language. Maybe we should do an extra outreach to do that. So we'll do that for sure.
Getting back to what Member Hill said, I think we need to capture 3 organizations: Avanzando, Promotores, and Parent Partners. There's 3 organizations, I think, that should be included in groups that you
Okay.
reach out to.
Can we ask Nicole to take those names down and maybe give us that contact information? The other thing I always ask as well is, are there faith-based organizations that could be helpful? And I often look at the churches for guidance to say that, hey, in churches, depending on the languages, et cetera, that's another place where we can get the word out that we're doing this and that people have a voice in the process as well. Yes.
Yeah, and then one last question. I'm sure it varies depending on the district, but do you have some best practices around community engagement and sort of, what are really key things that make that successful? And again, how I would suggest that we maybe think about following those if they're proven, but, what's your viewpoint on that?
There are certain opportunities for us to go to some of the places. Because
In
what we
person.
tend to do in person, because what we tend to do is bring everybody to the school site. And I think school districts have a tendency to do that, to say, we're going to have a meeting here, please come. And oftentimes there are other places that would be much more comfortable. We've done them in churches. We've done them in community centers, in a neighborhood, because that's where people are going to come. So those are types of things that have been our best practices, of being able to get the voices heard from people who have not necessarily been heard because they're not comfortable coming to the school site.
And also, I think one of the things that we found most recently is one of the unintended consequences of the pandemic is that there are a lot of groups that are much more willing to participate if they can do it with their bunny slippers on at home. So we have found Zoom to be just extraordinary in terms of being able to, we have had more responses from teachers, employee groups, when they're able to go home, take care of their kids, get their kids fed, and then, join us on a Zoom. So I think that's another, really positive way that's evolved over the time.
Another thing is, we were here last time, and there was a group meeting right over there. And so that group will be a group, I would say, hey, they're here. They're accustomed to coming here, et cetera. So in some cases, we may say, they meet on the third, blah, blah, blah. Can we just slide in?
Right.
And have a conversation with them, because they're here.
Yeah, okay.
They're accustomed to being here. Yeah, and so that's another way of having outreach that's really meaningful, that you're really talking to people where they are and where they're most comfortable. And we talked briefly to the head person of that group, and so they trust her, and so they would come and listen and participate if that person is involved in the process. So that's another way we do it.
So do we need to check with, are there any other particular groups that you want other than the ones? So, when we look at some of the, like the Rotary and things like that, are there any groups that are especially partnering with the school district that we want to make sure that we meet?
I would say Optimist Club and Rotary are two very important organizations.
And I would like to ask, if you guys are okay, a student board member, are there groups at the schools that we need to reach out to?
There's definitely a couple clubs that you could reach out to. One of the big clubs at our campus that's a very diverse club is Puente, which would be a good club to talk to.
Good. Thank you so much for that.
And I have a question, how long do these meetings usually last for? And what happens through them?
Okay, so basically, let's just say you're going to experience it tonight. You're literally going to experience it tonight at the end. And typically, they take about 30 minutes because we want to, first of all, get to know who's in the room, let them know who we are, what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be doing with this information, because it's important in some cases that the groups or the individuals want to be anonymous. And so they want to feel safe to be able to say, here's what I want to say, but I don't want it tied back to me, because there are going to be situations where it's obvious who it comes from, because, I can tell this is the teachers union. This is going to come from this group. This is why we look for trends to say, so there are not a lot of outliers. Doesn't mean you don't get that information. It just means that here are what the majority of your community says, and it doesn't matter where they fall, classified to certificated to parent to student, that they all said they want these qualities in the new superintendent.
So you'll be asking the group the same 3 questions?
Yes,
that-
yep. Every group gets the same 3 questions.
It's on the list.
And just as a follow-up, because you were asking, what are key organizations that you should reach out to? And you already sort of mentioned it, but just to emphasize it, our teachers, right, NTA, really, really critical. I mean, not only because, they're teachers, but also because one of our initiatives is to try to improve recruitment and retention. And so we really want to get their insights into that. And so that's one thing I wanted to comment on. And then the second was a question, because I was looking at your timeline on a different document. What's your sense of how long it's going to take for you to meet with these different groups and to come together with some feedback and maybe sort of a profile?
So our plan is, if taking a look at the online survey, that will go from March 7th. Yes, you heard me, tomorrow. And Jody's ready, or will be. Yep. So we've already had some conversations with her. And it'll go to the 17th. So we'll start getting feedback there. In addition to that, it's going to be on the 9th. It will go in. Our EdCal is an online. This is to all our administrators and people who subscribe to EdCal, which is basically our publication that most administrators use. It'll go out on the 9th on their online platform. It will be in their physical document on March 6th. So it's going to be out there. Once that's done, March 13th, I'm sorry. March 13th is when we're going to do the input sessions. So we'll be here for the 13th.
So next week.
Yep. We'll start next week. And then approximately once we have completed the online survey, we've completed the focus group sessions, approximately 10 to 14 days, we're going to give you a document that says, here's what we've come up with. Here are the characteristics. Here are the trends that the people in our district said they want to see. Here are the district's strengths based upon that same group of people. Here are the challenges that they see as well. And so we'll give you a profile about between 10 and 14 days after the 17th. We'll give you that document, and we'll present it to you. We'll have, and you'll get a chance to comment, et cetera, about that. And then at that same time, we'll put together what's called the professional profile, which is a document that the applicants will start to write to. Now, before we send out the precision profile, we're going to send it to the whole board to say, here's a draft of what we saw. Give us your feedback. Because we will not put anything out of that sort without having your approval.
Okay. So based on the timeline, you'll be presenting to us on March 16th, because that's the next board meeting that we have. Before
For which one?
Before the deadline for applications, because you said you'll present to us before.
Yes.
Okay, so that is our next open board meeting?
We'll probably, let me tell you what's most likely going to happen, because your, you see, application review 6, I'm looking at session. So I'm going to say it's probably going to be a little later than that.
Okay.
A little later than that. I'm looking for it. Because the applications are due on the 17th. So somewhere in that vicinity, once the online survey is done, we're going to, even almost before, because we'll start getting trends early. It'll be very clear where people are. We'll start putting things out to you, and we'll start sending things out. In addition to that, what we'll do is about every other Friday, we'll send you an update to say, at this point, we have 340 responses from the online survey. We've got 22 people who've requested applications. We have 6 who've submitted applications, and we'll keep you informed from that as well. But it is a tight timeline.
And just to be clear, so as you're going to go out, as you say, and do a blast, right? Reach out to a bunch of different communities, stakeholders, get a variety of input. You're going to compile it into some findings. You're then going to bring that to the board, and then you're going to work with the board to then basically put that into a profile, right? To compile that into something that would then be used to then advertise with, out to the candidates?
We'll actually already have a draft of that profile. So once we send you the trends, et cetera, we're also going to give you a draft profile to send to you.
Right, but then the board will ultimately look
Yes.
at that and then
Right.
say, provide input, and then it'll get finalized.
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sorry, I'm still having issues with the timeline because if deadlines for application is due March 17th, it doesn't give us a whole lot of time.
Right, and actually, what we try to do is, this evening, we're going to find out from you what you're looking for in your next superintendent, as well as the strengths and the challenges. Monday, the 13th, the two of us are going to get that broad brush with your stakeholders. By that time, we will have a pretty good idea of what it is, and we will have the first results from the survey in as well. So while this may not be an absolutely complete profile, what we're able to do at that point, however, is we'll give you a draft. You can look and see, does this resonate with the kinds of things that you had expected to see? And then we're also able to use that information when we're talking to candidates, because just as Eric said, people are already contacting us. They want to know what you're looking for. So we use the preliminary results as, kind of like a baseline for us to try to explain to them. Probably the most important thing about this profile is that when you're making your questions up for what you're looking for in the candidate, you want to make sure that you're hitting all of those areas that the community, as well as you yourselves, have said that you want to see in that next candidate. So it's kind of a multi-purpose tool. It's not like in the corporate sector where, there's a very legal prescriptive thing that you have to have in the position description. This is more something that, gives everyone an opportunity to have a voice in what you're looking for, and also it's a tool that we can use as we talk to the candidates, and that you can use as you're screening the candidates to see which candidates meet what the community as well as you are looking for.
And so to your point, yes, somewhere around the 16th, we will have something for you.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm assuming it's going to be earlier because
Yeah.
by then you guys already have, you guys have already started the recruitment process without having a complete profile for us to approve on the 16th.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah.
You get it earlier.
And,
So,
and maybe building on Member Wen's point, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like what you're saying is that this evening you're going to have these discussions with the board.
correct.
And put together our thoughts on what the profile might be and the different requirements and characteristics, et cetera. And that will probably serve as kind of the initial high-level summary that then goes and gets sent out on the 16th and 17th. But then the subsequent meetings that you have with a lot of other stakeholder groups, that's going to then be filling in a lot of the blanks and the white space. And maybe that won't affect the actual advertisement that's going out, but it is going to affect, as we have candidates come in and we do screening,
Right.
and now we're going to apply all of that to the
Correct.
screening. So is that a correct
Correct.
interpretation? Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely.
So my only issue with that is that while we are applying what our stakeholders are, giving us in feedback as input, we aren't really taking their consideration in terms of like what the characteristics they would like in a profile for the superintendent. So that's my only issue.
Sure. And that will, on the 13th, we'll have a lot of that. On the 13th, because that's when we're actually meeting with almost everyone. So at that particular point, we'll be able to take a look at what the board says today and what the community says on the 16th. On 13th, I mean, and so we'll have a pretty decent idea at that point. Because we're going to get somewhere in the vicinity of 300 to 500 people who are going to respond during that period of time.
And the initial survey as well.
Right. Questions, thoughts, comments? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So we're taking a look down at, let's look at number, yeah, I'm looking at the candidate review. I think we talked a little bit about that. You're going to get a portal for that. The candidate review is scheduled for April 5th. So check your calendars to make sure that would work for you. And that's where we're going to go over all of the applicants. In addition to that, somewhere around April 3rd, we're going to send you the applications. And we're going to have them tiered for you, so you have an idea of, here's who we consider your tier 1, here are the ones we consider your tier 2, here are the ones we consider tier 3s. Tier 1s pretty closely meet the criteria that the board and the community said they wanted to see. Tier 2, there may be something missing. They're close. And then we will have conversations whether or not we want to move them up. And then tier 3, we're looking at to say, no, we just do not feel that that group truly meets the criteria for a variety of reasons along the way. Questions, thoughts about that process? Yeah.
Do we know on that day what time you'd be looking at? Because it is a midweek. It's a Wednesday, the 5th, and it'll take how many hours? At least 2.5, about 2.5 hours.
Talking about the 5th.
The 5th, yes. Right.
Is that your spring break week?
No,
The following week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
took that into
looked at
account.
that.
That's why it's kind of compressed because we were looking at that week.
Will that work for all of you, that Wednesday? And is there a time that's best for everyone?
We're looking at you because
We're looking at
Yeah.
you.
his schedule's the most,
I probably can't
probably
start
tight.
before 5 p.m.
Okay.
Oh, that's fine, no problem.
Would that work for all of you, 5 o'clock? Okay, all right.
But is 5 comfortable for you, though, Aiden? We want to make sure you.
Sure, it's a Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Yeah. 6 might be safer.
Yeah, let's do
6?
that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, by the way.
yeah.
I'm coming from Cupertino.
Okay,
Okay, perfect, yeah.
No, I can make 6.
okay, good.
And we'll make sure there's food here, no worries. Jody, did you hear that?
Okay, next we have the day of the interview. And so we're looking at, let's see here, the 29th of April. All day. Say more.
I'm going to be in Sacramento
Okay?
for Future Business Leaders of America.
All right. What does the 15th look like?
April 15th.
April 15th.
I'm going to be in Hawaii.
Ha ha. Okay?
But I can be on Zoom, if that's okay. If that works for everyone, I can be on Zoom.
When are you back from Hawaii?
I'm not back until the 19th.
So the 15th is a Saturday.
Right.
So the 22nd is okay too. But since you guys are looking at weekends for to do that.
You can do the 22nd?
What's your schedule say?
I probably could do it.
I am going to be,
Or the 22nd.
I am going to be in France on the 22nd.
I'm so sorry.
I know. However, Jackie can do it. That's not an issue.
Would the 22nd work for everyone?
I think I'm joining him in France. I'm changing my trip.
Okay, let's do the 22nd.
Does the 22nd work? Okay, and it would be probably, oh, I'm sorry, Kate.
No, I walked out without my phone, but I will make it work. It's
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
My fault for doing that. I had it on the charger thinking I needed it and then I spaced, so
And we usually start around 8 o'clock in the morning, is that okay?
that's fine.
Sounds good to me.
So that's April
Second?
April 22nd?
Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
And we'll talk more about the validation visit on that particular date, because depending on where the candidate, the finalist is coming from, you'll determine whether or not that's necessary. And then typically, the contract is set up for, to start July 1st. You'll have to ratify it in an open session, depending on the candidate themselves, prior to that in a regularly scheduled board meeting. So you can look anytime after the 22nd, and/or if you decide to do a validation visit, anytime after that. But we'll talk more about that at the candidate review meeting. Questions, thoughts?
Does it need to be either May 4th or June 1st? Because we do have a meeting in between there. On, I believe it's May 18th. Let's see, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, the
Yeah, it
18th
is May 18th, because I remember looking that up. So the May 18th would be fine.
would be another option.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as
thank
long
you.
as it's a regularly scheduled board meeting, it's fine. Mhm. Okay. Okay.
What is it? Where are you going to be?
It's Delilah's birthday party.
Wait, on the 22nd?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
No. Family first, absolutely. No, we're not doing that.
Family first.
Always, that's right. Okay, let's come up with another date.
Look at another date then.
I'm so sorry.
Don't be.
23rd. It's a Sunday.
23rd?
23rd works for me.
23rd works for me.
Well, how about the 16th, if we're going to go to a Sunday?
She's in Hawaii.
I'm in Hawaii, but
Okay,
No, let's go to 23rd. If that works for everyone?
23rd, yeah.
The 23rd?
that's fine.
Thanks, Nicole.
Priorities.
All righty. Questions and thoughts so this far before we move you into, we'll talk a little bit more about the contract parameters. We are going to ask for the current or the former superintendent's contract, so that gives us, as I said, it's just some general ideas itself along the way, but does the board have any ideas in terms of contract parameters? And we're basically always looking for salary. We just want to be able to have a range. And this is for the board to have those conversations.
Right now?
Yes.
Go ahead. I mean, I feel we have to increase the salary over what our current superintendent is making, because if you look at a scattergram of the size of the district and where our superintendent now lands, it's low. So that's my general thought.
Okay.
And maybe you can provide some guidance on that, because you probably know different districts, et cetera, and benchmarks around salary. But I think that, as you're indicating, there's the first thing they're going to pay attention to is going to be the salary. I don't know if there's certain benefits that need to be advertised either, but I suspect, though, that from a contractual perspective, that we would want to have our lawyer take a look at this and make sure that, we've got a really strong contract going forward, going into that. So.
Yes, and in fact, and to your point, that we will encourage both parties, meaning the candidate and the district, to get legal involved, because you want to make sure you have a contract that stands up to the scrutiny of any aspects of it that you want to make sure that are included. And that, but most candidates are going to look at salary. In terms of the benefits, most will tell you that they want the same benefits as the rest of the management team that gets and so on. Talking about work days, it varies, but they're going to look at your former superintendent's contract to say, well, it appears the board approved this many work days or a positive work year, so I'm okay with that. There are going to be conversations about whether or not phone allowance, car allowances, and some of those types of things. But they're going to look at their old contract to say, well, they didn't allow for it, but it is negotiations. And so they may throw some things in there that you may not have had. But the number one thing is salary and what that range is going to be. You can take a look at their former superintendent's current salary and say, okay, here's our baseline, but we don't want to go any higher than this along the way. And that's basically what we look for. We look for a range. We don't look for a specific number because that's part of your negotiations. And also has to do with the experience of the candidate.
Correct.
You know, so if the candidate is a first-time superintendent, that's one salary. If they're coming from a district where they've been a superintendent for 5 years and have that experience, et cetera, that may be another salary point.
Yeah.
That makes the most sense.
Member Hill?
Yeah.
And then I think you mentioned before that we are in the season, right? Although we're maybe a little bit late, but we're still in the season. But but obviously, as I think Member Wen is alluding to, we're going at a pretty fast clip.
Yes.
And I guess kind of the question, that's where we really need to rely on some best practices. And obviously, there's certain things that we want, but also there's things that a potential superintendent wants. And so, so some of it involves marketing, and based on sort of your experience and what you're seeing going on right now, are there certain things that we should be paying attention to that would incentivize good candidates to be coming to us?
Salary, salary, salary.
Okay.
It's always salary, and it's based on a number of things. One, cost of living, one, retirement, and those are the things. They're all going to look at the salary and say, I can't afford because I'm making more than that now in my current position, or yes, this is in my range to do that.
Another excuse me, another consideration, I think, is that it's a lot easier, I think, to start at a good salary because it's difficult to grow a superintendent's salary after he's hired because
Correct.
he'll always be compared to
Correct.
what are you giving the unions, what are you giving the other management teams. So that's another reason, I think, to really look at how much we can afford and stretch it if we have to,
Sure.
or if we can.
Okay.
And another thing is you're going to have to be taking a look at your neighboring districts, those people that you're going to be competing with. What is their entry-level salary, for example? And making sure that you're not too far below that, because usually people have, kind of like a circle in terms of distance of where they live, where they might want to, unless you get somebody who's from out of the area. But even so, you're still competing with all of those districts that are your neighbors. So you have to make sure that you're competitive.
So my suggestion is to take a look at your former superintendent's contract, and then for the board to meet again to talk about, here's where we think we will land. We don't need that tonight, but we do need to have it fairly soon to be able to say to candidates who are coming from various places, the salary is competitive. And that's what we write. We basically say the salary is competitive in our advertisement. We don't put a number. However, we need to know that that number is, so that if they're coming from a place where they're making significantly more or significantly less, we can just let them know that you price yourself out of this particular position, which is realistic. So something to keep in mind. Other thoughts and so on regarding the process itself?
No.
This is an aggressive timeline, and it's intentional because we wanted to make sure that we can get the best candidates in the height of the season. And so for us, some of the timelines, to your point, Board Member Nguyen, we would have stretched it out further. We absolutely would have, but we can't, because we feel like we're getting calls now, we're getting calls from people who are looking at multiple districts, and we want to be able to say, no, this is the one we think is a great match for you based on what we're going to hear from you guys tonight initially.
I'm really heartened that you've already had folks asking
Yeah.
about us.
And I'm telling you, quality people.
I just got a
Quality-
text today,
Yeah.
right? I haven't even opened it.
Yeah, the quality people who we would say, even if they didn't meet what you said you wanted, they're still quality people. They're people who we would look at and say, yeah, you're ready, or you're a current superintendent, and so on. So that's really good that they're asking specifically about this particular district. That's great. Yeah.
They must be looking for a challenge, too.
Yeah.
And
They
it's-
have confidence in you and themselves and the district. Yes.
And is there a way that you can somehow advertise out within our community? And I don't know whether it's just simply putting it on our webpage or something like that, your contact information, because you never know. There could be people within our district that know somebody else that would be great, could be the former mayor maybe knows somebody, could be a variety of people. And we want to try to drive as many people, to you as possible.
100%, absolutely.
Okay, and so
We'll do that.
is the best way to do that to put your contact information on the website?
Yep,
Okay,
exactly,
great.
100%.
And another thing that we usually do, when we finish the, input sessions, we usually ask, are there any people that you know out there who might, qualify and might be interested? And they give us names to contact, so that's always a good way to get some information too.
Okay, it's showtime. We're going to ask you the 3 prompts. The first one being desired characteristics and qualities, experience you want to see in your next superintendent. We'll follow that up with strengths of the district and challenges as the third category. Keep in mind that it's fluid. So let's just say we're going to ask you, what are the characteristics you want to see? We've moved now from that to what are the strengths of the district, and you think, oh, I thought of another characteristic. Just say, hey, I thought of another characteristic. The second aspect of it is this. Sometimes a strength is a challenge, and a challenge is a strength. So it can be in both places, and that's okay. 100% okay. So we're just going to have you popcorn it out. So what are the characteristics and qualities you want to see in your next superintendent? Diego, oh, pressure.
He's prepared.
I was put on the spot there. Okay, it's okay. Characteristics. Okay, well, I had to think about this for a little, but I would definitely say that they have to understand our community, what we go through, and just know that there's ups and downs with our community. So whether that's attending the school events or not attending the school events, that's something that's important to me. Seeing that they care about the community and they show up when things happen, and when it matters the most. So that's something that I would look for. And I would also look for someone that's bilingual too, because we are a heavily Spanish-speaking population.
Okay. Next.
I think the superintendent needs to be collaborative, collegial, ethical. He needs to, or she needs to encourage and grow their staff, needs to recruit competent staff members, needs to be transparent, have excellent, or communicate broadly and often, and not hold anything back. Talk about the challenges we face as well as the good things. Don't always try to paint a rosy picture if it's not rosy. But sell the district. So be positive about the district. I think that person needs to be skilled. Someone that knows, maybe has been involved in a superintendent's cabinet. So has seen the trade-offs and discussions that take place between or among finance and among HR and ed services. Everyone has needs. How do you balance those needs? And to be part of conversations where they know the kind of issues and trade-offs that come with their department, if they're moving from a department now and they're not a superintendent, that kind of thing.
Nancy's ready. She was ready. Who'd like to go next? All right, Candace.
One of the things that I had on my list that she didn't mention was their longevity intent, like wanting somebody who doesn't think of this as a 2-year stop-off place. Somebody who's willing to, that really wants to be here. They want to be here for the long term. Not literally not using it as a puddle jumper. The other one that I was thinking about was having experience with at least at a assistant superintendent level, like President Thomas said, in having, oh gosh, hate this, but working with the cabinet, and then a really good listener, somebody who will really listen and hear what is being said, and then be able to take that and succinctly turn around and guide. I don't think that that's a skill that, that everyone has, and it's something that I personally really value in someone, is that they can really listen and then turn around and say, okay, let's do this, this, and this. Willing to delegate, definitely willing to delegate, and understands how to plan and then delegate, and to be a part of that planning if they're working with cabinet. But then being able to release and delegate is important. And I will definitely go with, the experience with the diverse community and potentially, a Spanish bilingual. Important, but I wouldn't say it would be a deal breaker, but it would be great.
So, one of the things that I'd mentioned to the board a few meetings ago was this book called Good to Great, that initially was used in the corporate area.
Jim Collins.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's being explored in a lot of other areas, including education. And they've talked about what were the characteristics, and they've talked about the leaders. But one of the things that I think sticks out in my mind, and it's a little bit of an intangible, I think that there's a way to connect, to put data to it though, is they call it the Stockdale paradox. But it's basically that you can confront reality and understand the challenges that you face, right? And you don't try to gild the lily, you don't try to dismiss the challenges that you face, but at the same time, you've got a vision for where you want to go. And I've used the analogy with the board, talking about going to the Super Bowl and giving the example of the 49ers in 1978, where they were the worst team in football, and nobody would go to their stadium in Candlestick, and they were totally written off. But then Bill Walsh came in, and 3 years later they were in the Super Bowl. And so I think that from my opinion, we want somebody who wakes up every day thinking about how can we make Newark a high-performing school district. And there's a lot of aspects to it, but particularly from an academic perspective, because the academic perspective drives everything else. It drives the enrollment, it drives the teacher retention, it drives the ability to get, bond money, et cetera. And so it's somebody that has that competitive desire to say, we really need to improve educational outcomes. And I think how you can tie that and have it be more than just lip service is somebody who has some level of record of doing something like that.
All right.
Right, I get the floor.
Closer.
So for the closer, I would, one of the two of the characteristics that I would really want to look for is somebody who's innovative, and drives innovation, and thinks outside the box. I don't, I think it's nice to have people who have experience, but also I want someone to be able to create a new vision for the district and help guide us through into the next century. But definitely, like student board member said, I think the most important aspect of all of this is someone who truly understands our community and is also bilingual. That's a definite plus. And someone who's collaborative and making sure that their leadership style is really caring for staff, making sure that, like Member Jones has said, growing staff to be able to, to improve on their own skill sets and also allow people to have some growth in their own journey and in the workplace. So I think that's really important that he is able or she is able to delegate responsibilities and trust staff to be able to do the work. So trust and respect also.
Other thoughts? Yes.
Oh, I would just like to really emphasize the point that Member Jones made about doesn't think of this as a two-year job, because as a high schooler, every year there's always a new administration, and it's so hard to get used to a new person and then another new person and getting to see how they work. And I want someone who actually wants to work here, not just someone who wants to put this on their resume for future jobs. I want someone who's dedicated to this job and sees this as an opportunity to grow this community.
But I also want to put that back on the board as well, because, I do believe the last superintendent we had here really was committed to this community. And unfortunately, we're here in this search again and we're moving forward. But we also have to be mindful of the fact that we make those decisions too. So we're part of that decision making. So just, again, be mindful of that.
I think one of the things also, getting back to what President Thomas said about communication, over the years, in the 34 years I was in the district, seeing the difference between the communication of styles of different superintendents in terms of community communication, but also staff communication with all stakeholders in the district. But I think it's really important that they want to do that. They want to communicate with the community what's going on, a recap of important things that the board decided at a board meeting, and putting that out there and letting people know so they're not wondering if they didn't watch the YouTube or they didn't attend the meeting, they're not wondering what's going on. They're getting that information in another way, and I think that's truly important. And it also, to me, it represents the transparency of these are the things that are going on, and we want you to know about it. We're proud about this.
I'd like to see a superintendent that reaches out to the city and creates a partnership with the city. I think we have a lot of opportunities to do that. And so who joins the Rotary or the Optimist Club, and so he's involved with the community, shows up at community events, and really does forge that relationship with the community.
And as a teacher, a love of kids. Somebody who really wants to be here for the kids, because that's real. I mean, that's what it's all about. It is all about them, and so I need to say no more.
I'm going to shift you to, what are the strengths of the district? This is your chance to brag. Yeah, again, if you think of something that's the characteristics, just say it. We'll put it right back on the list. So what do you want to brag about?
I'd like to brag that we are a very diverse community. We really are. I mean, when I think about the different populations, the different groups, and it's wonderful that we're so small, yet we are so diverse, and really celebrate that. The other thing that I think is really cool about our district is that so many of our employees live in town. So the community is the district, and the district is the community.
Kind of building on what Member Jones said. So some people see small maybe as not attractive, but in my opinion, I think it's one of our biggest selling points. So we're a self-contained district, and because of that, right, we can actually, the superintendent can have an enormous impact here. Going to LA Unified, forget about it, right? Even San Francisco, San Jose, way too big, way too many stakeholders, very, very complicated to get stuff done. We can get stuff done here. We can build a vision, and we can accomplish it.
And to Member Hill's comment, we have been doing that the last 2.5 years, despite the pandemic. We rolled out the Star Academy, which I would love for the new superintendent to contribute to and collaborate and expand on. It's our STEM program that stems from the elementary school with maker spaces, and to the junior high with coding and robotics, and then at the high school with more computer science, advanced AP classes, and robotics and rocketry. What else? And also in joint collaboration with our media arts special programs at the high school. They've been doing that, and so I think that adds on to the STEAM part of it, right? So yes, I would like them to be able to build on that, and then obviously our environmental literacy and making sure that all the elementary school sites, students are able to go to science camp and also have additional programmings, life science programs in the area come and continue to explore with the district. And then our DLI, dual language immersion, and making sure that that is expanded, and hopefully we'll be able to get it to other school sites, not just the one elementary school site that we currently have, so.
Thank you. I will tell you, those programs you listed were one of the reasons why I wanted to do the search.
Yeah,
Because I did a lot of that in the district where I was superintendent, and so I saw that, and I know the value of it. It really was a calling for me to say, ooh, they have these things. I'm really interested in this district.
Yeah, especially the Star Academy. There's only, there's not that many school districts in the state that have it. So we're one of the 40-something% that has it, so.
Aeronautics portion of that was amazing too.
Yeah, so it really was the reason why I looked at this district and thought, yeah, I want to see somebody who can really expand that, because that was my passion as a superintendent. I get it.
I think we have a very talented community, and I think we've been tapping into some of that talent, but I think we can do even more, because our parents are talented. They will volunteer. Members of we have businesses in town that are being involved in our STAR Lab and other activities. I think the more we can. It's a potential, it is a strength, but I think it's an area where we can even grow further.
I would like to say some of our strengths is that, well, especially Newark Days, none of them mentioned that, where it really builds community. We have a parade outside, like, I don't know what street we're on actually, but it's around here, where like the high school, the elementary schools, a bunch of clubs, like outside of in Newark, will parade around Newark, and then there's the carnival too, and none of the Fremont schools have that, so they will come like here too, like some of their bands will perform here. So it's really nice to see that, like the community that we build around here. And it's so fun to see like the elementary schools get dressed up, and Newark even did a float this year, the high school. And then at the high school as well, we have a lot of like cultural clubs as well. So we have Puente, which is a really big club because it's a statewide program, and the Fremont schools don't have that. So we're like the only school that has it in this like area. Logan has it as well. And basically, it's a cool club because it's a program that gets students into a four-year university. So that's like the main goal of the club. So there's fundraisings and there's a lot of other things that go into that club, but that's the main goal. So it's a really cool club to have on this campus because I know not a lot of other schools have that on the campus. And next week, we actually have our multicultural week coming up. So that's always a fun week for me at the high school because it's so cool to see all the different cultures that we celebrate at the campus. They have dances. We celebrate the food too. We hear from different speakers about like the different cultures that they come from and the different aspects of their culture. So it's a really good opportunity for students to learn about other cultures. And so I think that's like the biggest strength of Newark is just the community that we have here.
Member Hill?
Yeah, that's hats.
So one other advantage, and again, this, if we're marketing ourselves to a superintendent, so when .com 1.0 happened, right, I believe that the Wall Street Journal wrote an article and they identified Newark as the geographic center of Silicon Valley. And we are, and I actually chose to live in Newark for that reason because my former profession was as a consultant. And so I wanted to be able to easily go and out to a lot of different communities. And so whether it's hop up to San Francisco, jump over to Pleasanton, go down south to San Jose. And not only is that nice from a lifestyle perspective, but if you think about the richness of the Bay Area, and if we want to start collaborating with other districts and other resources, it's much easier to do that if you're in the middle versus if you're at one end or the other.
Another program is our athletic program. It's just far and above, and our athletic director was just named the athletic director of the year for the whole state of California. Oh, wow. Yeah, so, I mean, huh? Of the state, what did I say? What did I say? Oh, okay. Anyway, so I mean, it's an amazing program, and how many students participate? It's hundreds, but I mean.
Yeah, it's a lot because we have a lot of sports on the campus.
30 or 40% of our students at
Yeah,
least.
a good portion. And they also do a lot of like community events too. We have the Special Olympics, which we just had in February.
Special Olympics.
Like that was hosted at our campus. That was really cool to see. And then we also do like the holiday gift driving event where community members that don't have presents, the school will fundraise for them to make sure that they have a Christmas, which is a really cool event too. So that it's not just athletics at our campus is the sport, but it's also the community as well. We make sure to involve the community as well, which is really cool.
Yes. We do have a large community here. I mean, well, we're small, but we have a large, generous community of parents who participate in those events and donate to those events.
And of course, we have a lot of caring and highly qualified teachers. And classified staff and administrators.
And what's nice about some of the teachers too is that they come through the Newark schools, they go to college, and then they teach right in Newark, so they really know the community by heart.
Other thoughts? Being a teacher and knowing my time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of homegrown teachers in the district, and that's what Student Board Member Torres was alluding to.
How about the challenges?
Low enrollment.
Yeah, the declining enrollment.
Yeah, declining enrollment.
Member Hill?
Yeah, and again, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, this has been going on for a long period of time. We've had middling academic performance. And I think that we have the opportunity to improve it. It just means setting goals and going after them.
Other challenges?
We've had a large turnover in administrative staff, whether it's principal or at the district office, as well as teachers. But the administrative staff has also had a turnover. So the longevity of the DO staff in particular and principals is not as long as it has been in the past, which, does make it a little more difficult because they don't have the history. But that's easily remedied through, just conversations with people that have been around for a long time.
I think one of the challenges is the fact that, we tried several times to go for parcel taxes and bonds. We did have 2 bonds that were successful, but the last 2 times that we've tried to quiz the community, they don't see us as strong. They don't see the district as, they point out the district leadership, I don't know, that their opinions are such that we don't think we can get a successful bond pass. So we've got to find a way to have the community see some of the good things we've been talking about that the district is and does, so we don't have that kind of a survey result that we want to be able to go for a bond or a parcel tax. We need more, especially with declining enrollment, we really do need more resources.
Right. Currently, I think every district is facing this, is teacher retention and turnover. So hiring qualified staff to be able to fill all of our classroom needs.
I would also add that in the past, we've had, at least in my awareness, we've had better relationships with corporations in town and businesses in town, ones that could, potentially, I remember when I was, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, our school was paired up with one of the companies in town, and that there were benefits to that. And I think that partnership has kind of fallen by the wayside. And it was a really good program. It was nice to be partnered up like that, and I'd love to see that happen again. But I'm not quite sure why that fell to the on the wayside.
And I think the last one is like really selling the district story, because we don't actively, we've been trying to market the district, and we're in the process of doing that. But I think the challenge is that there's people who are parents, new families that are coming into New York. They look at obviously the scores, the test scores, but they don't really understand where their child is going to be in, or how they're going to be performing based on those scores, right? I was one of those parents when I first started in the district. I didn't understand, oh my gosh, I can't put them in that school or that school site because the test scores are so low. But, I had to go back and look at the test scores and say, hey, my child is going to do fine because, based on where they're going to fall, this is how they're going to be performing, right? So that's the other thing that I don't think that parents really understand, why the scores are the way they are, and we need to do better. We need to better educate parents who are coming into the district if they're wondering, solely, why are the schools underperforming, and that's not necessarily true. And I think that, and if I did that, I wouldn't have sent my kids to the district, and my kids thrived in elementary school and at the junior high and at the high school. So I would basically, we have successful stories in the district, but they just never get out because all of the negative narratives tend to rise above those positive ones. Overshadow, yes, that's a better word.
In fact, if you look at other districts that have the same demographics that we do, they don't seem to have the negative input from the community that we sometimes see. In other words, parents seem a lot more happy and accepting, and the community seems a lot more happy and accepting in those school districts that are not scoring even as high as we are. So you have to say, you know, how can we reverse that?
Any other characteristics you want to see? Any other strengths you want to brag about, or any other challenges?
I would say somebody that would have experience in helping to turn around the image, you know, from their position, and getting all those positive things that are going on out there and seen more than they are right now, so that they aren't overshadowed, because we do have some fabulous programs that are going on.
Member Hill?
And going back to Good to Great, one of the things they talk about is they talk about level 5 leadership. And one of the comments that they make is it's not the flashy, you know, big name CEO that is the one that is, you know, accomplishing these results. Oftentimes it's a lower key person, and they describe them oftentimes as kind of oddballs. But at the end of the day, they're committed to results, right? And I think that that's really what we need, is somebody who's really committed to results.
Well, thank you guys for this. We have quite the extensive list.
And we'll find that unicorn for you.
Good answer.
Awesome. Good. So with that, there are no more questions. We can move into closed session.
Okay.
We have to.
We are leaving for closed sessions, and
There's what?
just a minute. Oh, we do have a public comment for closed session. Okay, Mr. Knoop, Carrie Knoop.
Thank you.
I'll say it. Yeah. I won't forget that again.
I learned that last time I should not speak too loud into the microphone because the decibel meter just goes past 0, and then it's all bad. Just one comment. I'm a little bit confused why you would need to go into closed session now. Because, of course, the Brown Act is a very limited scope of why you would want to go in closed session. Now, if you have already a potential candidate that you want to discuss, then, of course, closed session is good. But a sort of general discussion about, you know, I really want to talk about what I like to see the superintendent should be, but I don't want the public to hear it. Obviously, that's not the intent of closed sessions. So I suppose you could discuss some salary things that probably is within the bounds. But beyond that, I don't really see much that there is legally to be discussed in closed session. And then forgive me if I don't see it, and I would like to be educated, but I am rather surprised that, you know, we're already going into closed session, because closed session for an hiring is typically about specific people that you then want to go talk about. So if you go into closed session, always remember, you know, it's not a sort of group discussion about the features of what you would like to see, because that really needs to be done in public session. Thank you. And you know this, okay. Good night.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we will be going to closed session where we will discuss public employee appointment, employment, and the title is superintendent. Thank you.